Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Workout Grind. So, it's been a while. It's been a hell of a lot of a while. Whatever. How am I today? Before that, let me just change up some things here. So yeah, what's new? Today, I'm a little bit lost. Again, I always feel like this, and I feel like I'm not progressing. Like I hit a plateau, and I feel like I'm just doing the same things over and over again. I think that's a good sign, because that's the feeling that I get when I was really productive before. You know, like I feel like I'm not doing anything. I should do something, but yeah, just gotta show up, right? I think I relapsed for like 2-3 weeks, which is bad. I did work out a bit, but they're not focused. But I will try to do workouts today now. Hopefully, I won't fuck it up. And today, nah, I'll just do this. Bicep curls again. So yeah, it should be fun. Yeah. I cleaned up my room, but it's a little bit messy now. I'm really gonna try my best to actually fix my guitar today. That's my first priority. Sure. And I'm gonna do some of my resume. Gonna create like a portfolio landing page, I guess. Cap, stuff the cap. I don't know. Let me just do that. And I'm gonna try to finish my YouTube video if I can. Honestly, I don't know. I'll probably start with a small project. Or just start with any project, honestly. I don't really care. I'm mumbling. Anyways, what's new in my life? Damn. I can't say anything. Nothing. Yeah, nothing. Pretty depressing. What's going on? Let's not kill the mood. Anyways, I'm just gonna listen to TED Talks. I easily get distracted. I should meditate. Right, I'll meditate after working out. Anyways, time for the begins, everybody. Look at this. I'm not being consistent, you guys. I'm so sorry. I'll try to become a better model next time. Okay. Apparently, I get thinner. I lose like weight. I lose my muscles. I still have this fucking chubby thing. I don't know why. It's still there. It's still there. Let me just go search it up on the internet before I start working out.
Today I want to test the Galaxy Watch. I want to test the body composition analysis on the Galaxy. Just place your ring and middle fingers on the keys like this and make sure your wrist is down like 45 degrees like this. Lift your arms and then place your fingers like this, and that's how you can take a measurement. Let's see how that works. All right, so in order to do this, I'll let you enter your weight, then place your Okay, let's have a look at the results. So my weight is within the normal range. This is the perfect, or let's say the normal range. You can see anything above that is the red zone. So this is the bad thing. As a matter of fact, that's 14. Fat is BM.1 grams, and that's about it.
Bioelectrical impedance analysis, BIA, is a method of measuring body composition. It uses a weak electric current to find the amount of water stored in the body. If a person has low impedance, the results will indicate there is more water and thus more muscle tissue. Now, why is that important?
Core benefits of measuring body composition is that your weight doesn't reflect the amount of muscle, fat, and water in your body tissues. And by measuring these over time, you can adjust your diet and your activity level to get these measures into a healthy range.
For years, Samsung has been working to make BIA technology more accessible. So we wanted to integrate it with a device that we all use every day, so more people can regularly track their health.
Oh, that's cool.
To be hitting.
Yeah, my analysis was correct before. It really was secure. Apparently I'm in a healthy zone, but my stomach is crazy stupid. But it's okay. Whatever. Where am I? Oh, yeah. Let's go. Let me just clean my room first, okay? Don't mind me. Yeah, I definitely lose muscle, but it's okay. Just a second, okay? Alright, let's go. I charge up everything in my device. Phone, my earphones, my power bank, oh my god, smartwatch, my tablet. Oh, good. All pretty fancy. But yeah, that. But that. This. I guess like that. Yeah, sure. Like that. Yeah. We're ready to roll.
Bigger welcome. Hello, San Francisco. TEDx. Oh my God, blinding light. Hi, everybody. How are you? Fine. Oh my gosh. Okay, so my name is Mel Robbins, and for the last 17 years, I have done nothing but help people get everything that they want. Within reason. My husband's here. And so I've done it in the courtroom, in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in people's living room, whatever room you want to be in. If I'm there, I will help you get whatever you want by any means necessary. For the last 3 years, I host a syndicated radio show. 5 days a week, I go live in 40 cities, and I talk to men and women across America who feel stuck. Do you know that 1/3 of Americans feel dissatisfied with their lives right now? That is 100 million people. That's insane. And I've come face to face with it in this new show that I'm doing, which is also insane. It's called In-Laws. I move in with families across America. You guessed it, who are at war with their in-laws. We move them into the same house. I verbally assassinate everybody. We open up Pandora's box, and I get people to stop arguing about the donuts and who's hosting Thanksgiving dinner and talk about the real stuff. And that's what I want to talk to you about. I'm here for you. I'm going to tell you everything I know in less than 18 minutes about how to get what you want. So I want you to take a millisecond right now, and I want you to think about what you want. You. And I want you to be selfish. Screw Simon and the we thing. This is about me, right now. Sorry, Simon. What do you want? And here's the deal. I don't want it to sound good to other people. Being healthy will not get your ass on a treadmill. Losing your man boobs so you could hook up with somebody, now that's motivation. So I want to know, what do you want? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to triple your income? Do you want to start a nonprofit? Do you want to find love? What is it? Get it right here. You know what it is. Don't analyze it to death. Just pick something. That's part of the problem. You won't pick. So we're going to be talking about how you get what you want. And frankly, getting what you want is simple. But notice I didn't say it was easy. It's very simple. In fact, if you think about it, we live in the most amazing moment in time. So that thing that you have up here, whatever it may be, you want to use healthy eating to cure your diabetes, you want to figure out how to take care of the elders and start a new hospice center, you want to move to Africa and build a school, guess what? You could walk into a bookstore right now and buy at least 10 books written by credentialed experts on how the hell you do it. You could Google it, and you could probably find at least, I don't know, 1,000 blogs documenting the step-by-step transformation that somebody else is already doing. You can find anybody online and cyberstalk them. You can just walk in their footsteps and let them, just use the science of drafting. Follow what everyone else has done, because somebody else is already doing it. So why don't you have what you want? When you have all the information that you need, you have the contacts that you need, there are probably free tools online that allow you to start a business or join a group or do whatever the heck you want. It all comes down to one word. Shut the front door, you know what I'm talking about? The F-bomb. It's everywhere. You hear it all the time, and I honestly don't understand what the appeal is of the word. I mean, you don't sound smart when you say it. And it's really not expressing how you really feel. It's sort of a cheap, shot to take. And of course, I'm talking about the word fine. How you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Oh, really? You are? Dragging around those extra 40 pounds? You're fine? Feeling like roommates with your spouse? And you're fine? You haven't had sex in 4 months? You're fine? Really? I don't think so. But see, here's the deal with saying that you're fine. It's actually genius. Because if you're fine, you don't have to do anything about it. But when you think about this word fine, it just makes me so angry. I mean, here we are at a conference about being alive, and you're going to describe the experience of being alive as fine? What a flimsy and feeble word. If you're crappy, say you're crappy. If you're amazing, say you're amazing. Tell the truth. And this not only goes for the social construct, I don't want to burden you with the fact that I hate my life, or, hey, I'm amazing, but that would make you feel terrible. The bigger issue with fine is that you say it to yourself. That thing that you want, I guarantee you, you've convinced yourself that you're fine not having it. That's why you're not pushing yourself. It's the areas in your life where you've given up, where you've said, oh, I'm fine. My mom's never going to change, so I just can't have that conversation. I'm fine. We got to wait until the kids graduate before we get divorced, so we'll just sleep in separate bedrooms. I'm fine. I lost my job. I can barely pay my bills, but whatever. It's hard to get a job. And, one of the reasons why this word also just annoys me so much is scientists have calculated, oh yeah, I'm coming down. Scientists have calculated the odds of you being born. That's right. They've crunched the numbers. I see you up there. They've crunched the numbers on you. Yeah, no, you guys standing up, you want to sit down for this. They've crunched the numbers on you being born. And they took into account all of the wars and the natural disasters and the dinosaurs and everything else. And do you realize that the odds The odds of you, yeah, right here, put your computer away, stand up for me, Doug. So the odds of Doug here, turn around, say hi to everybody. The odds, yeah, of Doug being born at the moment in time he was born to the parents you were born to with the DNA structure that you have, 1 in 400 trillion. Isn't that amazing?
I'm so lucky.
Yes. You're not fine, you're fantastic. You have life-changing ideas for a reason, and it's not to torture yourself. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. You know, Christine was right when she said all of you could be on stage, because all of you, we're all in this category. 1 in 400 trillion. All day long, you have ideas that could change your life, that could change the world, that could change the way that you feel. And what do you do with them? Nothing. Oh, hopefully I won't moon you. You didn't pay for that. And I want you to just think for a minute, because we all have, I love to use the analogy, the inner snooze button. You have these amazing ideas that bubble up, right? You've been watching people all day, and I guarantee you, like, you know, ping pong balls, boom, 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 boom. You've got an idea, oh, I should do this, I should do that. And every time you have an idea, what do? Boop, hit snooze. What's the first decision you made this morning? I bet it was to go back to bed. Yeah, first decision today. I'm 1 in 400 trillion. I'm going to go back to sleep. And I get it. Your bed is comfortable. It's cozy, it's warm. If you're lucky, you've got, you know, like somebody that you love next to you. Or in my case, I've got my husband and my 2 kids and possibly the dog. And the reason why I'm bringing up this first decision that you made today and the inner snooze alarm is because in any area of your life that you want to change, there's one fact that you need to know. Just one. You're never going to feel like it. Ever. No one's coming. Motivation isn't happening. You're never going to feel like it. Scientists call it activation energy. That's what they call the force required to get you to change from what you're doing on autopilot to do something new. So try this test tomorrow. You think you're so fancy. I know you're attending TED. Try this. Tomorrow morning, set your alarm for 30 minutes earlier. And then when it goes off, take those sheets, throw them off, and stand up and start your day. No snooze, no delay, no I'll just wait here for 5 seconds since Mel's not standing here. Do it. And the reason why I want you to do it is because you will come face to face with the physical, and I mean physical, force that's required to change your behavior. Do you think that somebody who needs to lose weight ever feels like going on a diet? Of course not. Do you think they ever feel like eating boiled chicken and peas instead of a croissant? I don't think so. The activation energy required to get your ass away from your computer and out your front door to go on the walk you said that you were going to go on is the exact same amount of force that it takes you to push yourself out of a warm bed and into a cold room. What's interesting about being an adult is that when you become 18, nobody tells you that it's now going to be your job to parent yourself. And by parent yourself, I mean it's your job to make yourself do the crap you don't want to do so you can be everything that you're supposed to be. And you're so damn busy waiting to feel like it. And you're never going to. My son never feels like getting off his DS. That's my job. Get off the damn DS. Kendall, clean up the Barbies. If you're going to have a nude party in my bathroom, at least clean it up. God, chew with your mouth closed. We're not in a barn, for crying out loud. All right, dinner's coming, get out of the pantry. As parents, and you were a kid, your parents make you do the things you don't feel like doing because you won't. Ever. Not now, not then, not ever. And even when you get good at something, you'll figure out something else you don't want to do. And then you'll plateau out and you'll get bored and you're like, I hate this job, this is boring. But will you look for a new one? No, you'll just bitch about that one. It's very, very simple to get what you want, but it's not easy. You have to force yourself. And I mean force. And the reason why I use the word force, when Roz was up here and talking about the emotion tracking, and she had the picture of the two sides of the brain, I look at the brain the exact same way. Only I describe one side of your brain as autopilot, and the other side is emergency brake. That's the only two speeds you get. Autopilot, emergency brake. And guess which one your brain likes better? Autopilot. You've had the experience where you've driven to work, right? And you get there and you're like, oh my God, I don't remember driving here. You weren't drunk. That was your brain on autopilot. It was functioning just at this level. And the problem with your mind is that anytime you do anything that's different from your normal routine, guess what your brain does? Emergency brake. And it has that reaction for everything. Everything. You walk into the kitchen and you see everybody's left their breakfast dishes for you. And you think for the 100th time, I'm going to kill them. In fact, I'm going to leave them here and I'm going to make them do it. But that's not your normal routine, is it? So your mind goes, emergency brake. And you go right into autopilot. I'll just load it and be pissed and then not have sex. That's what I'm going to do. So when I say force, anything that's a break from your routine is going to require force. And if you think about your life, it's kind of funny because we, are kids and then we become adults and we spend so much time trying to push our life into some sort of stable routine, and then we grow bored of it. You wake up at, the same time every day, you have largely the same breakfast, you drive to work the same way, you show up at work, you look busy, you avoid making calls, you update Facebook, you attend a meeting and doodle the whole time, you go back and update Facebook, you make plans for the evening, you look busy some more, then you drive home the same way, eat largely the same dinner or, variety of it. You watch the same kind of media, and then you go to bed and do the same thing all over again. No wonder you're bored out of your mind. It's the routine that's killing you. I have this theory about why people get stuck in life. So most of you have probably taken your basic Psych 101 class and you've bumped into Andrew Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, your body is kind of cool because you have these basic needs. And your body is wired to send you signals. If you are hungry, if you need food, what do you feel? If you need water, what do you feel? If you need sex, what do you feel? Thank you. I think when you feel stuck or dissatisfied in your life, it's a signal. And it's not a signal that your life is broken. It's a signal that one of your most basic needs are not being met. Your need for exploration. Everything about your life, about your body, grows. Your cells regenerate, your hair, your nails, everything grows for your entire life. And your soul needs exploration and growth. And the only way you'll get it is by forcing yourself to be uncomfortable. Forcing yourself to get outside, out of your head. Thank you. If you're in your head, you're behind enemy lines. That is not God talking, okay? It's not. In fact, if I put a speaker on it and we broadcast what you say to yourself, we would institutionalize you. You would not hang out with people that talk to you the way you talk to yourself. So get out of your head. Your feelings are screwing you. I don't care how you feel. I care about what you want. And if you listen to how you feel when it comes to what you want, you will not get it. Because you will never feel like it. And you need to get outside your comfort zone. It's not about taking risks, it's about getting outside your comfort zone. Those first 3 seconds when you push yourself out of bed, they blow. But once you're up, it's great. Those first 3 seconds when you're sitting here in a studio or a stadium like this and somebody says, get up and come dance, and you think, oh, I should do that. And then you're like, oh. That experience that you had where you had the impulse to do it, and then you didn't do the activation energy required to force yourself, your emergency brake got pulled. I'm sitting right here. I'm not going up with those crazy people. I don't like to dance. Well, what happened for me is I came up and I bumped into Rachel, and then we started talking, and next thing you know, she's tweeting. And we're friends, and boom, get outside. That's where the magic is. That's where the 1 in 400 trillion exists. So everything I do, wait, okay, this is the last part, sorry. So one more thing that you can use, I call it the 5-second rule. Your mind can process a facial expression in 33 milliseconds. It can move pretty damn quick. The other thing that it does very quickly is if you have one of those little impulses that are pulling you, if you don't marry it with an action within 5 seconds, you pull the emergency brake and kill the idea. Kill it. If you have the impulse to get up and come dance while the band is playing, if you don't stand up in 5 seconds, you're going to pull the emergency brake. If you have an impulse about you were inspired by somebody's speech today, and you don't do something within 5 seconds, write a note, send yourself a text. Anything physical to marry it with the idea, you will pull the emergency brake and kill the idea. Your problem isn't ideas, your problem is you don't act on them. You kill them. It's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault. You're doing it to yourself. Stop it. I'm counting on you. 1 in 400 trillion. You got stuff to do. And it's not going to happen in your head. So I want you to practice this today. When we go off to party, thank God it's coming soon because I think we all could use a cocktail. I want you to practice the 5-second rule. You see somebody and you think they have that impulse, they look interesting. Walk over there. You were inspired by somebody and you have a request, make it. That's why you're here. Experiment with it, and I think you'll be shocked about what happens. And one more thing, I want you to know that everything that I do, whether it's the radio show or the television show or the book that I wrote or the column, it's for you. And if there is anything that I can do, if I can do anything to make you do the things you don't want to do so you can have what you want, I will do it. But you need to walk over, you need to open your mouth, and you need to make the request. You got it? Good. Go do it. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, stand up. You have the impulse. Stand up. Thank you.
So I'll start with this. A couple of years ago, an event planner called me because I was going to do a speaking event, and she called and she said, I'm really struggling with how to write about you on the little flyer. And I thought, well, what's the struggle? And she said, well, I saw you speak, and I'm going to call you a researcher, I think, but I'm afraid if I call you a researcher, no one will come because they'll think you're boring and irrelevant. And I was like, okay. And she said, but the thing I liked about your talk is, you're a storyteller, so I think what I'll do is just call you a storyteller. And of course, the academic, insecure part of me was like, you're going to call me a what? And she said, I'm going to call you a storyteller. And I was like, oh, why not Magic Pixie? I was like, let me think about this for a second. And so I tried to call deep on my courage, and I thought, you know, I am a storyteller. I'm a qualitative researcher. I collect stories. That's what I do. And maybe stories are just data with a soul, you know, and maybe I'm just a storyteller. So I said, you know what? Why don't you just say I'm a researcher storyteller? And she went, there's no such thing. So I'm a researcher or storyteller. And I'm going to talk to you today. We're talking about expanding perception. And so I want to talk to you and tell some stories about a piece of my research that fundamentally expanded my perception and really actually changed the way that I live and love and work and parent. And this is where my story starts. When I was a young researcher, doctoral student, my first year I had a research professor who said to us, here's the thing, if you cannot measure it, it does not exist. And I thought he was just sweet talking me. I was like, really? And he's like, absolutely. So you have to understand that I have a bachelor's in social work, a master's in social work, and I was getting my PhD in social work. So my entire academic career was surrounded by people who kind of believed in the life's messy, love it, you know, and I'm more the life's messy, clean it up, organize it, and put it into a bento box. And so to think that I had found my way, to found a career that takes me, you know, really one of the big sayings in social work is lean into the discomfort of the work. And I'm like, you know, knock discomfort upside the head and move it over and get all A's. That was my mantra. So I was very excited about this. And so I thought, you know what? This is the career for me because I am interested in some messy topics, but I want to be able to make them not messy. I want to understand them. I want to hack into these things that I know are important and lay the code out for everyone to see. So where I started was with connection, because by the time you're a social worker for 10 years, what you realize is that connection is why we're here. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. This is what it's all about. It doesn't matter whether you talk to people who work in social justice and mental health and abuse and neglect. What we know is that connection, the ability to feel connected, is neurobiologically, that's how we're wired, it's why we're here. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start with connection. Well, you know that situation where you get an evaluation from your boss and she tells you 37 things that you do really awesome and one thing that you can't, you know, an opportunity for growth. And all you can think about is that opportunity for growth, right? Well, apparently this is the way my work went as well, because when you ask people about love, they tell you about heartbreak. When you ask people about belonging, they'll tell you their most excruciating experiences of being excluded. And when you ask people about connection, the stories they told me were about disconnection. So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be shame. And shame is really easily understood as the fear of disconnection. Is there something about me that if other people know it or see it, that I won't be worthy of connection? The things I can tell you about it, it's universal. We all have it. The only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human empathy or connection. No one wants to talk about it, and the less you talk about it, the more you have it. What underpinned this shame, this I'm not good enough, which we all know that feeling, I'm not blank enough, I'm not thin enough, rich enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, promoted enough. The thing that underpinned this was excruciating vulnerability. This idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. And you know how I feel about vulnerability. I hate vulnerability. And so I thought, this is my chance to beat it back with my measuring stick. I'm going in, I'm going to figure this stuff out, I'm going to spend a year, I'm going to totally deconstruct shame, I'm going to understand how vulnerability works, and I'm going to outsmart it. So I was ready, and I was really excited. As you know, it's not going to turn out well. You know this. So I could tell you a lot about shame, but I'd have to borrow everyone else's time. But here's what I can tell you that it boils down to. And this may be one of the most important things that I've ever learned in the decade of doing this research. My 1 year has turned into 6 years, thousands of stories, hundreds of long interviews, focus groups. At one point, people were sending me journal pages and sending me their stories, thousands of pieces of data, and 6 years. And I kind of got a handle on it. I kind of understood this is what shame is, this is how it works. I wrote a book, I published a theory, but something was not okay. And what it was is that if I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness, that's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness. They have a strong sense of love and belonging. And folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. So what I did is I took all of the interviews where I saw worthiness, where I saw people living that way, and just looked at those. What do these people have in common? And I have a slight office supply addiction, but that's another talk. So I had a manila notebook, a manila folder, and I had a Sharpie, and I was like, what am I going to call this research? And the first words that came to my mind were wholehearted. These are kind of wholehearted people living from this deep sense of worthiness. So I wrote at the top of the manila folder, and I started looking at the data. In fact, I did it first in this in a 4-day, very intensive data analysis where I went back, pulled these interviews, pulled the stories, pulled the incidents. What's the theme? What's the pattern? My husband left town with the kids because I always go into this kind of Jackson Pollock crazy thing where I'm just like writing and going and kind of just in my researcher mode. And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And so these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was they had connection, and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which is, you have to absolutely do that for connection. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental. I personally thought it was betrayal. I could not believe I had pledged allegiance to research where our job, the definition of research is to control and predict, to study phenomenon for the explicit reason to control and predict. And now my mission to control and predict had turned up the answer that the way to live is with vulnerability and to stop controlling and predicting. This led to a little breakdown, which actually looked more like this. And it did. It led to I call it a breakdown, my therapist calls it a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening sounds better than breakdown, but I assure you it was a breakdown. And I had to put my data away and go find a therapist. Let me tell you something. You know who you are when you call your friends and say, I think I need to see somebody. Do you have any recommendations? Because about 5 of my friends are like, woo, I wouldn't want to be your therapist. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, I'm just saying, don't bring your measuring stick. It's like, okay. So I found a therapist. My first meeting with her, Diana, I brought in my list of the way the wholehearted live. And I sat down, and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm great, I'm okay. And she said, what's going on? And I said, and this is a therapist who sees therapists, because we have to go to those because their BS meters are good. And so I said, here's the thing, I'm struggling. And she said, what's the struggle? And I said, well, I have a vulnerability issue, and I know that vulnerability is kind of the core of shame and fear and our struggle for worthiness, but it appears that it's also the birthplace of joy, of creativity, of belonging, of love, and I think I have a problem, and I need some help. And I said, but here's the thing, no family stuff, no childhood shit, I just need some strategies. Thank you. So she goes like this. And then I said, it's bad, right? And she said, it's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. And I said, oh my God, this is gonna suck. And it did, and it didn't. And it took about a year. And you know how there are people that, like, when they realize that vulnerability and tenderness are important, that they kind of surrender and walk into it? A, that's not me. And B, I don't even hang out with people like that. For me, it was a year-long street fight. It was a slugfest. Vulnerability pushed, I pushed back. I lost the fight, but probably won my life back. And so then I went back into the research and spent the next couple of years really trying to understand what the wholehearted, what the choices they were making, and what are we doing with vulnerability? Why do we struggle with it so much? Am I alone in struggling with vulnerability? No. So this is what I learned. We numb vulnerability. When we're waiting for the call, it was funny, I sent something out on Twitter and on Facebook that says, how would you define vulnerability? What makes you feel vulnerable? And within an hour and a half, I had 150 responses. Because I wanted to know, what's out there. Having to ask my husband for help because I'm sick and we're newly married. Initiating sex with my husband, initiating sex with my wife. Being turned down, asking someone out. Waiting for the doctor to call back, getting laid off, laying off people. This is the world we live in. We live in a vulnerable world. And one of the ways we deal with it is we numb vulnerability. And I think there's evidence, and it's not the only reason this evidence exists, but I think that it's a huge cause. We are the most in debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult cohort in US history. The problem is, and I learned this from the research, that you cannot selectively numb emotion. You can't say, here's the bad stuff. Here's vulnerability, here's grief, here's shame, here's fear, here's disappointment. I don't want to feel these. I'm going to have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. I don't want to feel these. And I know that's knowing laughter. I hack into your lives for a living. I know that's, God. You can't numb those hard feelings without numbing the other affects or emotions. You cannot selectively numb. So when we numb those, we numb joy. We numb gratitude. We numb happiness. And then we are miserable and we are looking for purpose and meaning. And then we feel vulnerable. So then we have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. And it becomes this dangerous cycle. One of the things that I think that we need to think about is why and how we numb. And it doesn't just have to be addiction. The other thing we do is we make everything that's uncertain certain. Religion has gone from a belief in faith and mystery to certainty. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. That's it. Just certain. The more afraid we are, the more vulnerable we are, the more afraid we are. This is what politics looks like today. There's no discourse anymore. There's no conversation. There's just blame. You know how blame is described in the research? A way to discharge pain and discomfort. We perfect. If there's anyone who wants their life to look like this, it would be me. But it doesn't work, because what we do is we take fat from our butts and put it in our cheeks. Which just, I hope in 100 years people will look back and go, wow, you know. And we perfect, most dangerously, our children. Let me tell you what we think about children. They're hardwired for struggle when they get here. When you hold those perfect little babies in your hand, our job is not to say, look at her, she's perfect. My job is just to keep her perfect, make sure she makes the tennis team by 5th grade and Yale by 7th grade. That's not our job. Our job is to look and say, you know what? You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. That's our job. Show me a generation of kids raised like that and we'll end the problems I think that we see today. We pretend that what we do doesn't have an effect on people. We do that in our personal lives. We do that corporate, whether it's a bailout, an oil spill, a recall. We pretend like what we're doing doesn't have a huge impact on other people. I would say to companies, this is not our first rodeo, people. We just need you to be authentic and real and say, we're sorry, we'll fix it. But there's another way, and I'll leave you with this. This is what I have found. To let ourselves be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen. To love with our whole hearts, even though there's no guarantee. And that's really hard, and I can tell you as a parent, that's excruciatingly difficult. To practice gratitude and joy in those moments of kind of terror when we're wondering, can I love you this much? Can I believe in this as passionately? Can I be this fierce about this? Just to be able to stop and instead of catastrophizing what might happen, to say, I'm just so grateful. Because to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. And the last, which I think is probably the most important, is to believe that we're enough. Because when we work from a place, I believe, that says, I'm enough, then we stop screaming and start listening. We're kinder and gentler to the people around us, and we're kinder and gentler to ourselves. That's all I have.
Sharing. That's video on the Human Network. Siska, welcome to the Human Network.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a great day for so many reasons. But first, I just want you to know I'm the last speaker, and after me is the ballet. So let's give it up for all the speakers all day long. What a great, great group. I've learned so much from them. So a few weeks ago, I think I made a huge mistake, which is kind of normal for me, but I didn't know it was going to be a mistake. I'm like one of those fathers who likes to brag to his 12-year-old daughter. So I let my 12-year-old daughter read a book I wrote, which was a big mistake because then she comes to me a few days later. She's a quick reader. I'm proud of her. I'm bragging about her now. So she comes to me a few days later, and she says, Daddy, I hated this book. And I'm like, Molly, why did you hate this book? It's my favorite thing I've ever written in my entire life. And she said, throughout the entire book, you're always crying, you're gonna kill yourself, and you're gonna cry, and you're crying on the floor. What's wrong with you? And I said, because I want to be a good example to my children, I said, well, honey, I wanted to tell the truth. And at that time, I was feeling that down and out, that low. And in particular, she was referring, first she said, after I said that, she said, but Daddy, that's really mean. And I thought about it, and I'm glad she said that, actually, because at the time that she was referring to was a really, for me, difficult time. I had built and sold a business I had been proud of, and literally in one summer, I was like a drunken rock star on steroids. Like I went from $15 million in the bank to $46 in my ATM machine. Like I had nothing left. I was getting my house was being lost. I was losing my marriage, losing my family. I was so ashamed. I couldn't talk to any friends, so I lost all my friends. I even couldn't deal with my parents. I couldn't deal with anything. I was depressed, and I really thought it would be better for my children, my two little girls at the time, for my children to have a $4 million life insurance policy than to have a father. You ever get into that situation where you start off, you have a wide funnel at the top of choices and ideas and so on, but then you get a little depressed and it starts to spiral down lower and lower, 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 until you feel like there's only one way out. And that's how I felt. But I really wanted to have other choices. I had two kids. I really needed to have another choice. I went to a therapist, and he said, what can I do for you that will help you feel a little better? And I said to him, the only thing you can do is write me a check for $1 million. And he said, trust me, that won't help you. And he was right. And what I decided to do, and look, we all the time have many choices in life. And a great and wise man once said, if you don't make the choices in your own life, then someone else is going to end up making them for you, and it won't be good. So it might be a boss, it might be a professor, it might be your parents, it might be colleagues, someone else, might be a company, someone else is going to start making choices for you, and they're not going to be as good as the choices you can make yourself. Of course, that great and wise man was myself, being very humble here. But I had failed and succeeded, and I started over 20 businesses, 17 of them failed. And we unfortunately live now in this culture that almost glorifies failure. Like, we're supposed to be so happy, oh, fail fast. It's like this failure pornography almost, that we just worship people who fail and then somehow succeed. But I can tell you, like, failure is really unpleasant, and it's much better to view it as, like an experiment. Like Thomas Edison, he didn't fail 10,000 times when he was making an electric light bulb. He just experimented, and then he made an electric light bulb. We don't consider that the guy was lying on the street about to kill himself on the very first try. He tried 10,000 times. So I decided to look back as an experiment and say, well, what was going right every time I was going up, and what was going wrong every time I was going wrong? And I decided that there were 4 distinct things that were working for me, and I'm going to add a 5th at the end of this talk. But there were 4 distinct things that were working for me every time I was on the way up, and 4 things that were failing for me every time I was on the way down. So the first thing was physical. Number 1, physical. I was when I was lying on the floor feeling the worst, I was overweight, I was drinking, I was just very unhealthy. I was sick all the time. If you're sick, you can't, you're not, if you're having pneumonia all the time, or if you're, stuck in bed all the time, you're not going to go out and save the world. You have to sleep well, you have to eat well, you have to exercise well, and that doesn't mean drive 2 miles to the gym and then walk 2 miles on the treadmill and then drive 2 miles home. It means just, again, the average professional violinist, turns out, a little trivia tidbit, sleeps 8.6 hours a day. So I'm going to do that too. So I decided every day I was going to try to 1% improve how I was acting physically. I was going to walk more. I was going to eat a little better. I was going to sleep a little better. I was going to stop staring at computer screens as much. I was going to start to laugh a little bit more. The average kid laughs 300 times a day. And I could see that. Like when I go to one of my kids' performances, the adults are all standing around. Like there's an intermission always. Because who wants to go to a performance of a bunch of 13-year-olds? Like it's the most boring thing in the world. So the adults are all like standing outside intermission. Like the kids are running around, chasing, laughing. So the average kid laughs 300 times a day. The average adult laughs, guess how many times a day? 5 times a day. What the heck happened? What did we do to ourselves? And the problem is, in part, is because of all these responsibilities and all these choices that other people have made for us. But the first thing is keeping physically healthy. The next thing is, number 2, is emotional health. And this was very important for me. I was basically doing all my business and all my friendships were with people I didn't necessarily love and trust. So I have to basically, I made it a commitment every day I was going to 1% improve on being around people I loved and trusted and people who loved and trusted me. And it started off very difficult. I didn't know what to do. I was on the ground. When you're on the ground, you can't just suddenly, jump up and say, hey, life is great. You're on the ground. And so here's the first thing I tried to do, my first experiment in being around people who love me. Of course, it always starts with an ad on Craigslist. And I put an ad on Craigslist which said I had a head injury, and after the head injury was over, I found out I was psychic. And anybody could write to me and ask me any question they want. So I got hundreds of emails that day, and of course, I threw out all the emails from men and only answered emails from women. And you might ask, like a lot of people, I tell this story, and the first thing they ask is, well, did you end up going out with any of the women? And I'm like, look at me, of course I didn't go out with any of the women. But I did end up being friends with some of them, though, I have to say. But very important for me to always be around now people I love and trust. And the difference in my life has been remarkable. Just having that, waking up thinking I'm going to be around people who love me and who I love. Sounds easy, but it's not always easy. One time somebody wrote me an email and said, James, I love all your ideas. I'm trying them, coming up with business ideas left and right. And he said, but one problem I have is every Friday night I go out drinking with my friends and they just trash all my ideas. What should I do? And I said, very simple, stay home on Friday night. I never heard from him again because it's actually hard to do these simple ideas. Number 3, spiritual. And I don't like using the word spiritual because it means something different for each person, so I'm going to call it creative gratitude. And this is not easy gratitude. Like, I'm always grateful for my kids and for my wife and for everything, but that's almost like emotional sugar. It's like a little too easy. So I think of the phrase complaining is draining. How many people just today have at least complained once? And I know I have. So raise your hand if you've complained at least once. I can't see a goddamn thing in the audience, so I don't know if anybody's actually complaining. But just think, like maybe you were in traffic on the way here and you were like, honey, you just missed the ramp because we're going to miss James Altucher's talk. Ramps, by the way, they should just get rid of them because you miss one ramp and it's like a tractor beam of Tijuana, which is just bad news. So the key is, though, this is an opportunity to solve difficult gratitude problems, I call them. Like you could say to yourself, in this example, wow, I live in such a great and innovative city that everyone wants to be here, and that's why there's traffic. So I'm here and everyone else here because it's such a great city. So anytime there's a problem where you feel like the seeds of complaint coming up, think of how to turn it into gratitude, because I guarantee you it's always there. And again, don't change overnight. I'm just talking about 1% better every night. And then finally, the fourth thing is, and I have my one prop of the evening, this is a waiter's pad, because I'm going to take your orders afterwards. No. What I do is every day I write down 10 ideas. Why do I do this? Think about your leg muscles. If you got into a bike accident and you were laid up in a hospital bed for 2 weeks, you would actually need physical therapy to walk again. That's how fast the leg muscles atrophy. It's the same thing with the idea muscle.
Stay there, bro.
If
Stay
you write
there.
down 10 ideas a day, I guarantee you within 6 months, you'll be an idea machine. A year, that's 3,650 ideas. Give yourself permission to have plenty of bad ideas, because you're going to have many bad ideas, but you will be an idea machine. And again, this has changed my life. And this is not advice, because we're all smart and intelligent and talented people, but this is what I did. And my life has completely changed every 6 months, almost 100%. It's been remarkable. But I'm going to add a fifth thing that's really the most important thing, and that's give ideas to X. Come up with 10 ideas for X. Come up with 10 ideas for 10 different companies or 10 different people, and start sharing those ideas with no expectation of them sharing back with you. Because when you have no expectations, it's amazing how easy you get to exceed those expectations. And what happens is 1 out of 50, 1 out of 100, 1 out of 20 will want to get back to you. Did get back to me. This is how so much has changed in terms of financial, health, relationships, my networking, my opportunities for the future, just by creating this chain reaction of spreading ideas as the new currency of this new century. And it's been very exciting. Finally, the universe has left us really with only one gift, and that's the gift of this one moment we're all sharing together. And I'm so grateful, for instance, I haven't peed in my pants during this moment that we're sharing together. But the key is, with this one moment, what do? You have to make art with it, and then you have to share it. And I'm really thankful that we've all been able to share this moment together. So thank you for letting me speak.
I can tell the guy is really, really nervous.
What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your time and your energy?
Drugs.
There was a recent survey of millennials asking them what their most important life goals were. And over 80% said that a major life goal for them was to get rich. And another 50% of those same young adults said that another major life goal was to become famous. And we're constantly told to lean into work, to push harder and achieve more. We're given the impression that these are the things that we need to go after in order to have a good life. Pictures of entire lives, of the choices that people make and how those choices work out for them, those pictures are almost impossible to get. Most of what we know about human life, we know from asking people to remember the past. And as we know, hindsight is anything but 20/20. We forget vast amounts of what happens to us in life, and sometimes memory is downright creative. But what if we could watch entire lives as they unfold through time? What if we could study people from the time that they were teenagers all the way into old age to see what really keeps people happy and healthy? We did that. The Harvard study of adult development may be the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. For 75 years, we've tracked the lives of 724 men. year after year, asking about their work, their home lives, their health, and of course, asking all along the way without knowing how their life stories were going to turn out. Studies like this are exceedingly rare. Almost all projects of this kind fall apart within a decade because too many people drop out of the study, or funding for the research dries up, or the researchers get distracted, or they die, and nobody moves the ball further down the field. But through a combination of luck and the persistence of several generations of researchers, this study has survived. About 60 of our original 724 men are still alive, still participating in the study, most of them in their 90s. And we are now beginning to study the more than 2,000 children of these men. And I'm the fourth director of the study. Since 1938, we've tracked the lives of two groups of men. The first group started in the study when they were sophomores at Harvard College. They all finished college during World War II, and then most went off to serve in the war. And the second group that we've followed was a group of boys from Boston's poorest neighborhoods. Boys who were chosen for the study specifically because they were from some of the most troubled and disadvantaged families in the Boston of the 1930s. Most lived in tenements, many without hot and cold running water. When they entered the study, all of these teenagers were interviewed, they were given medical exams. We went to their homes and we interviewed their parents. And then these teenagers grew up into adults who entered all walks of life. They became factory workers and lawyers and bricklayers and doctors. One president of the United States.
What?
Some developed alcoholism. A few developed schizophrenia. Some climbed the social ladder from the bottom all the way to the very top. And some made that journey in the opposite direction. The founders of this study would never in their wildest dreams have imagined that I would be standing here today, 75 years later, telling you that the study still continues. Every 2 years, our patient and dedicated research staff calls up our men and asks them if we can send them yet one more set of questions about their lives. Many of the inner city Boston men ask us, why do you keep wanting to study me? My life just isn't that interesting. The Harvard men never asked that question. To get the clearest picture of these lives, we don't just send them questionnaires. We interview them in their living rooms. We get their medical records from their doctors. We draw their blood. We scan their brains. We talk to their children. We videotape them talking with their wives about their deepest concerns. And when about a decade ago we finally asked the wives if they would join us as members of the study, many of the women said, you know, it's about time. So what have we learned? What are the lessons that come from the tens of thousands of pages of information that we've generated on these lives? Well, the lessons aren't about wealth or fame or working harder and harder. The clearest message that we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Period.
Oh, fuck.
We've learned 3 big lessons about relationships. The first is that social connections are really good for us and that loneliness kills. It turns out that people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to community are happier, they're physically healthier, and they live longer than people who are less well connected. And the experience of loneliness turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be from others find that they are less happy, their health declines earlier in midlife, their brain functioning declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. And the sad fact is that at any given time, more than 1 in 5 Americans will report that they're lonely. And we know that you can be lonely in a crowd and you can be lonely in a marriage. So the second big lesson that we learned is that it's not just the number of friends you have, and it's not whether or not you're in a committed relationship, but it's the quality of your close relationships that matters. It turns out that living in the midst of conflict is really bad for our health. High conflict marriages, for example, without much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health, perhaps worse than getting divorced. And living in the midst of good, warm relationships is protective. Once we had followed our men all the way into their 80s, we wanted to look back at them at midlife and to see if we could predict who was going to grow into a happy, healthy octogenarian and who wasn't. And when we gathered together everything we knew about them at age 50, it wasn't their middle-aged cholesterol levels that predicted how they were going to grow old. It was how satisfied they were in their relationships. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. And good, close relationships seem to buffer us from some of the slings and arrows of getting old. Our most happily partnered men and women reported in their 80s that on the days when they had more physical pain, their moods stayed just as happy. But the people who were in unhappy relationships, on the days when they reported more physical pain, it was magnified by more emotional pain. And the third big lesson that we learn about relationships and our health is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains. It turns out that being in a securely attached relationship to another person in your 80s is protective. That the people who are in relationships where they really feel they can count on the other person in times of need, those people's memories stay sharper longer. And the people in relationships where they feel they really can't count on the other one, those are the people who experience earlier memory decline.
Okay.
And those good relationships.
There you go.
So this is the view from the Hubble Space Telescope. And it sends us images of star clusters and galaxies from far off in distant deep space. And this is the view from my microscope of just what exists in that single teaspoon of seawater. So the very nice big bright stars that you see in my microscope are in fact plankton, such as tiny one-cell plants.
Alright, so I'm done with my workout. Pretty good workout. Also, good lessons. Internet makes me want to talk to my old friends now. Anyways, I'm gonna take a bath. And yeah, I'm gonna do some programming and fix my guitar and yeah, make a song? Who knows? But today is not really about programming day. I will program, but that's not going to be the core part of my thing today. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for joining.